Mic check. All right. Good morning, YouTube. Educator's House is back. We are in homeroom right now. I'm going to take just a few moments to get things set up, but I wanted to give greetings. I've been reviewing my content as I'm in this experimental phase and realized that for the YouTube viewer, I'm slow to get started. So I just wanted to initially give you some greeting. I have a few things that I'm going to try out in today's homeroom as I solidify this content. And if you happen to catch this on the live, I should be able to check out your comments. So please drop a comment so that I can test that out. And I am going to launch this room. This is not the first time that I've had problems with this room. 16, 19. Give me a moment, you guys. What I'm doing now is setting up homeroom on the app, which is what I use where my community meets with me. And I'm going to start this right now, weekly, and yes. And I'm done with that. Today is 16, and I start the event. All right. So that wasn't so bad. So to round out what's happening on the technical side, I have both. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Mic check. Okay, this thing seems to be working. I have a lot of pieces of technology that I use to make this homeroom app work. So thank you for coming through. I'm using Club Deck on my desktop. I have a mixing board with a microphone, as you may be able to see. If you want to see what's going on, Maria, you can check out my YouTube at Educator's House. I'm streaming this live on YouTube. And I'm doing something a little bit different today. It's going to be a little more visually interactive. So rather than do news views from a article perspective or from an audio only perspective, I'm actually going to be trying out sharing the screen. It's a tech that I haven't done, and because I'm a solo producer, I have to like queue up the screen, share the screen, pull it down when it's time. I'll be moving windows to make my face bigger or smaller. So there's going to be a lot of moving parts, and it might be a bit choppy, but this is my first time trying something like this. So while I'm in the beta phase of whether or not this concept of homeroom is actually viable for the community, I would appreciate your patience and your support. So you can check out the YouTube. I will try to drop the link from time to time. It's difficult for me to do too many things at once. But look, it's right here, YouTube. I'm gonna copy this right quick. Copy. I'll drop this down. There's a bit of a delay, I'll be honest with you guys. So it might be a challenge to click on it. Try to be in both places at the same time. So if you want to um, be on both apps simultaneously, I would recommend muting one or the other, probably muting the audio app and then just watching the YouTube, and then you can drop comments. If you do happen to drop comments, I would appreciate it because I am trying to view YouTube comments in real time while I run the show so that I can interact with the YouTube community and the Clubhouse community at the same time. I really need a producer. If anybody wants to volunteer to help me produce this show, let's talk about it. Okay. With that being said, what is homeroom? So, if you guys went to a standard American school, you probably have experience with something called homeroom. It's a place where you come together to get news and announcements, updates on what's going on. There may be some school-wide initiatives or things that need to be collected or distributed. Oftentimes, those things happen in homeroom. And so it just makes sense for Educator's House to have, as one of the rooms in the house, a space called homeroom. So this is a morning show. I haven't totally figured out what it is supposed to look like, but I've been working with ChatGPT. I have some replays of the first two beta pilots for this concept. So I'm going to try not to be too redundant in that space. But this is the intention behind this space is to be a morning show focused on educational issues. On one hand, I thought it would be a straight news show. I got some feedback from some members of the community to turn this into a community news where everyone who joins may bring their own news story and we can talk about it. There's some pros and cons to that. One of the biggest cons, of course, is that at least for the United States, on Pacific time, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. On Eastern time, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. So either my fellow teachers are like busy trying to get themselves to work on time, or prayerfully, if they're on the West Coast, they're actually still asleep and not quite up yet. So I think the success of this show, it may not hinge on a wide live audience, but the success of this show may hinge on the replay ability of this homeroom concept. So as people are going to work, they can check out the live cast, or they can add their comments as we grow and develop. Another piece that we have been really focused on is um, excuse me, whether or not this is going to be community conversation based or more broadcast style. Personally, I'm leaning more towards broadcast style, but one thing that I've learned about moving from a passion project to an actual business is that you can't always go with what you think. It's always smarter business to, sorry, I have a little bit of exposure here. See, this thing right here is what bothers me. If you're watching me on YouTube, I'm just taking a quick digression. My lighting is off, right? And I don't know what to do about it. So if anybody can help me fix the lighting or give me some ideas on what's going on with my lighting, I would appreciate it because it has this weird white noise exposure at certain times. Okay, thanks for that little commercial break. If it is broadcast, that puts a lot of the onus on me, and then I've got to be able to push through with enough content 3 days a week. It is going to require some off hours research and collecting information and data. If I do a community base, then it really depends on what I'm going to either recruit co-mods that are like scheduled to be on and they're doing work on behalf of this show as well. And if that's the case, I've always believed in fair compensation. So how do I compensate somebody for their time and effort? If on the other hand, I rely on the randomness of community volunteers, then I have no idea who's going to show up. And so if I'm leaning on others to contribute to the content, then that's going to be risky business. So there's a lot of moving parts here. And today I'm going to experiment with a new style, one of which I'm not particularly familiar with. And I know that there's going to be a lot of technical moving parts. So I am going to try some things. For example, I recorded a few sounds. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I'm going to try them all. All right, the cricket, the applause, and more. Right. So these are Clubhouse classic sounds, and then I have a few. If I'm not mistaken, I have a few of my own. Got the train whistle, right? Woo woo, let's get ready to go type jive. So I have slowly been collecting some audio clips that might serve as good filler, right? A good way to sort of round out the audio experience. So the problem, of course, with all of this is that it's all done on the monitor. I wish I had one of the. In fact, if anybody has one to donate, that'd be great. But I wish I had one of those little drum pads where I could push a button, a physical button, and it would give me the sound because it just takes up another window on the space and reduces my actual available real estate. So trying to figure out how and where to place this screen for the sound clips, trying to figure out where and how to place the screen for my news clips when I do screen sharing. All of this is what I'm trying to figure out, and I made a commitment if I could just be transparent um, to minimize my outside of live hours to figure this out. So a lot of this, what we're doing is me building the homeroom with you in real time. Just because, to be honest with you, I have so many hours that I'm spending off of this outside of this live time that it's hard for me to be committed to do it. So while it's rocky right now, it is certainly something that I hope to smooth out, and your support is greatly appreciated. Okay, so I'm also going to be arranging these windows so that I can try to get everything that I need for this live. Shout out to anyone who may have just come in. I am experimenting with a new offering here in this community. And so I appreciate your patience, but I also appreciate your support. Comments, questions, concerns, leave them all in the chat. I'll probably review them, if not live, certainly right after as I review the show. All right. So where does that put me? That puts me, I think, I mean, it's 11 minutes after the hour. What should happen, according to my relationship with ChatGPT, at this hour is, let's see if I can pull up my schedule of GPT. Where do I keep GPT? What should be happening at this hour? GPT and I have put together a bit of a schedule. Hmm. Right. So let me write this note down. So what I need to do is pull the print version of the schedule so I can look at it. Print schedule, showrunner. That way I can just look at it at a glance, right? Um, Here we go. 3 minutes of welcome and warm up. From 3 to 10, top story deep dive. Okay. Choose one high impact educational headline, 2 to 3 talking points, and a spicy take. Invite Clubhouse mics to line up. I love it. And then for minutes 10 to 20 would be trending topics roundup, rapid fire review of headlines, tweets, TikToks, or reels. Use hashtags on screen. Okay. That's what I want to do right now at the 10 to 20 minute mark. So at least for the next 8 or so minutes. Rapid fire review of headlines. Okay, let's try that out. Let's do that. So I want to share the screen. Appreciate your patience, everybody. Let's figure it out. Sharing the screen, window, entire screen. Huh. Brave tab. Oh, now this is interesting. Entire screen. I'm sharing my entire screen. The windows that I have available. Okay, let me talk a little bit about the tech I'm just going to be a true beta here. I'm using Restream, as you may see, especially if you're watching on YouTube. And on Restream, it allows me to share windows. But what I'm figuring out here is that it allows me to share browser windows, right? So I use Brave browser. So there's 3 options here. One is a Brave tab, and the Brave tab has all of, even if it's different Brave browser windows, it gives me a list of all the tabs that I have open. Clearly, I have a lot open, probably far too many. Now, this could really work well if I'm sharing an article, and maybe I should do that just to test it out. Let's do this one. Okay, I'm going to share an article now. And I don't know what it's going to look like, so I'll have to review it when I get back to YouTube. But here's a story: how Head Start dodged Trump's budget cuts. Now, I'll be honest with you, I haven't fully read this story or vetted it, but it brings up something interesting. So I'll talk more about what I know, and you can read the story for your own, for yourself, which means I should be able to take this copy, head over to Restream, and maybe I could do it as a lower third. Is that what I'm doing? No, it's not even a clickable link. So maybe I should just read it as a head. How? Let's do it like this. Head start dodged Trump's budget cuts. Secondary text is optional. We won't use that. We'll add it and we'll show it. Okay. So for the good of interesting, let's edit, cancel, design. I see. That means I should go back to the purple. Okay, what I'm doing in real time for the Clubhouse audience is I am working Restream, which is piping through YouTube. So I'm just working on right now my lower third, which means 190033. I'm going to my signature. Yeah, I think that's better. Going to my signature colors, my brand colors. 190033 is the dark purple color. I'm using that as the background for my lower third. And then I have the title of the article. So what this is teaching me is if I am going to do some articles, I should have the headlines for the articles pre-prepped, and then I could just add that into the lower third. Currently, what you see on YouTube, obviously, if you're on YouTube, you see it. There's the article itself. My little picture, my little window where my screen is in like a lower corner. And then I see the title of the article. So all of that would need to be pre-prepped if the show is going to move smoothly. So I need to have my 2, 3, 4 articles already sort of identified and ready to go, tabbed up, and then I could just go to the tab. I'll bring up the article, bring up the headline, right? So if I'm going to do this, this is what needs to be done ahead of time. So let's talk about this story. At least you can get some real value out of this beta test. Um, Donald Trump has been very clear about his interest in changing education. And I want to be clear, I don't think he really cares about education per se. I think the reason that he and Donald Trump, he and Elon Musk get along so well is because they are comrades. And so while I digress, let me just add some layers to my lived experience. There's a great American preacher named T.D. Jakes, and one of my favorite sermons of this preacher is deals with the topic of leadership, and it talks about these 3 types of friends that you need to be clear about when you are a leader, so that you don't get these relationships confused. One of them is the confidant. And a confidant is a person who is there for you. So these are going to be few in number, but they're loyal to you, whether you're up or down, in or out, right or wrong. They're going to stand by you because they are for you. So if you have a big mission and something that you're chasing down, like Homeroom, for example, this very thing that I'm doing, I have a few friends who are for me. Now, the challenge, of course, is they want whatever I want to be successful. So sometimes, even if it's not a very good idea, they will be like, go for it, bro. I believe in you. And so my comrades are definitely going to have my back and want to encourage me, but may not always check me if I need it, right? And just tell me that it's a bad idea. Because they are for me and they want what I want to be successful. Then you have those are the confidants. Then you have constituents, right? And he describes constituents as people that are for what you are for. So the constituents are not for you. They don't really care as much about you as they care about your mission. And so I have a lot of the people in my community are for what I am for, and that is about making radical change in education. And now is our time because the paradigm is shifting and we've got to uh, put our thumb on the scale, if you will, in order to get the changes that we think are important. We being the frontline educators. So these are the people that are for what I am for, right? We are all here together because we're for the same mission. Those are the constituents. Then you have comrades, and the comrades are against what you are against. So, the friend of my friend is my enemy, or what, however that saying goes. We may not be friends, but we're fighting a common enemy. So, therefore, we get along. That is what it means to be a comrade. We are more brothers in arms than we are chasing after the same mission. No, we're fighting against the same enemy. And so I think when I think about the dynamic between Donald Trump and Elon Musk, I think about them in that way. They are comrades because they are fighting against the same enemy. What is that enemy? Elon Musk coined the phrase brain, what did he call it? The mind virus, which I plan to do a real deeper analysis on this idea of the mind virus. But what I have learned through the landscape of politics today is that there are basically two major camps. There's the critical theory camp, and I hope to expose what that is, versus what I'm calling American exceptionalism camp. And I don't know if that's really the right word for it. Let me see if I can. Sorry, I'm trying to manage the tech and this content at the same time. So give me a second. Okay, here we go. Hey, Andre, glad to see you here. I don't see much in the chat, so I'm going to get back to what I was saying. So you have what what the critics would call the woke mind virus camp, which is the system, the critical theory camp. So critical race theory, critical queer theory, um, etc. falls within this critical theory camp. It's a deep philosophy of how societies ought to work. I want to get into it a little bit more later, but for now, I'm just going to practice this concept. The other side of it is what I'm calling the American exceptionalism. Some might use the term merit, some might use the term capitalism, but this idea that you can work hard and achieve success, right? That kind of revolves around merit. That kind of revolves around this idea of American exceptionalism, this whole manifest destiny that we're going to carpe diem, seize the day, and success can be at your fingertips. And America's a great country for that. So the challenge is for those who are part of the American exceptionalism camp, it says, this is the land of opportunity, go for it. And there's nothing holding you back, right? The other side, this critical theory side, says American capitalism is a system, and that system, inherent in the existence of the system itself, will have winners and losers. And it is the system that creates the losers. So we must resist the system, which is where let's use critical race theory as an example. Critical race theory says there is something called systemic racism. And those who are the victims of systemic racism are must band together to push against the system. That philosophy has made it into the Democratic side of American politics for several cycles, right? From the Bidens, the Obamas, and don't you say nothing about my President Obama, okay? But he's part of that camp, and I have to be critical of him. I can be critical of him, not you, all right? um, and even further back, right? So this has been a thing, and we've seen this evolution. And my hope over this season that I'm focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, my hope is to fully expose and unpack. So I don't want to put it into a nutshell, but what I can put into a nutshell is these two broad philosophies. And the fact that Donald Trump is now in office, he's pushing against the woke liberal agenda and moving more towards this American meritocratic exceptionalism way of structuring government. And there's some implications to that as well. So the pendulum is just swinging. Okay, with all of that groundwork laid, and I know I've used a whole lot of words. uh, Completely libertarian. Yeah, see, Andre, I am more of a libertarian. And even as a libertarian, in this context, it's hard to thread the needle, right? Because on the liberal side, they take it too far. And then on this other side, this, I don't know what to call it, this Trump agenda side, They take it too far. So it'll be interesting to see if we can find that middle road. But yeah, I appreciate that comment. Um, with all of that being said, I don't think that Donald Trump really cares about education per se. What I think Donald Trump cares about is uprooting and undermining again in air quotes, the woke mind virus that has permeated education. And there's some historical context to that because strategically speaking, the critical theory camp uses the institution of school in order to um, move their agenda forward, right? So not only in the way that the school system operates, but also in the messaging, which is where we hear, what is the word that they use? Indoctrination. We've heard the, I'm calling it American exceptionalism side, say that school is the land of indoctrination. They're indoctrinating our kids with all of the rainbow stuff, with all of the this modern sex education stuff, with this hate white people should hate themselves stuff, and black people should, people of color, you know, gender identity, all of these are identity groups that American exceptionalism is very critical of. And so those groups have now made it into the school, and now they say that kids are being indoctrinated. It's really complicated, and I hope to take my time to unpack it. That's what Donald Trump is against, is that kind of a thing, not necessarily math or English or science, but what else you're teaching our kids during that curriculum time is supporting the critical theory agenda. He wants to unroot that. So part of doing that is budget cuts. Federal government has the power of the purse. And so we've seen it already. And maybe that's where I should bring this news story in. So this is a practice, and I might bring this story back up, but I'm just trying out what homeroom could look like for the good of the group. Um, he's been cutting budgets, and the way that he's been doing it, and I have followed what do you call those people, the Project 2025 people, Heritage Foundation, and other groups like them who are very critical of what's going on here. What they have done is significant amounts of research, and they have called out, I'll share it in a future podcast, they have called out a lot of universities in particular who let me lay a little bit of the landscape here. I know I'm totally not even talking to Ayana. Oh shoot, we about to, let's see if you want to come up. This might be interesting. Um, where was I at? The undercut. I'm sorry, Ayana. You got me. You threw me off. I was excited to see you here, and now I'm messing up. Anyway, let me just get back to the story. So Donald Trump. Okay, here we go. Donald Trump is cutting budgets, and by cutting budgets, what he's trying to do is undermine this woke mind agenda thing. So he's what the people of that ilk have done is looked at universities and say, do you know that for every 12 faculty members, there is one non-faculty DEI style office that's being held at a university. And what that means is, let's see, what's 1 divided by 12 right quick? That is less than 10%. Let's see. 1 divided by 12 means that about 8% of the entire campus's staff are non-faculty, non-grant generating, non-academic DEI style offices, right? So you have a director of the Black student, whatever. You'll have some sort of, and they have staff, right? You have the director of the LGBTQ experience, the director of the Latino experience, and that director might have 2 or 3 staff members. They'll have an office on the campus, and the kids can come in there, but there's not, it's a non-academic experience, right? There's no grade associated with it. Um, and then you might have a whole DEI office, which might be in the C-suite at the university, right? So you might have someone at like a dean level that just deals with DEI stuff. And so they're going to be looking at the data regarding like what races are coming in, what's the retention towards graduation, what's the graduation rate, what's the average time to complete the degree. They're looking at all these things, and then they want to move the needle a little bit to try to achieve parity or equity at some point. And so there's a very interesting, y'all invite you up, Andre, and Fro's in the building. All right, we talking shit now. So they've seen this sort of bureaucratic intrusion on university campuses. And I'm in education. You know, part of what happens during the hiring process, when I used to be in the classroom, I applied for a position. And in that position, they expected me to give the woke agenda endorsement statement. You know, what are your thoughts about diversity, equity, and inclusion? And I did not give the right answer, and I did not get the position, right? And I've got years of experience. I've never not gotten a job until this moment. It was part of my signal, like, okay, I need to get up out of here. And so while they're pushing back, what they're doing is cutting funds. So we see it in Harvard, they're cutting funds. We see it with a few other universities where if they don't do what the federal government is asking, the federal government's going to pull their funds. This is what's happening here with Head Start. They're pulling funds because the argument is a lot of this woke agenda indoctrination bull jive is happening even at the very early grades. And so they want to pull funds. So this particular article talks about how the Head Start people have figured out a way to avoid Trump's power of the purse and um, cutting budgets. Okay, so that was a whole lot of words to get around to a story about how a bunch of little kids are still able to get free breakfast at Head Start or Crystal Stairs or whatever your local version is. The other interesting part about that movement, and maybe I don't have a news story, but I'll just rant for a little bit, deals with what's going on with the homeschool thing. And homeschool is a very interesting space. I sent you an invite, Andre. I'm not sure if you can come up. Okay, there he is. Hey, Andre, I know I've said a lot and you've been here for a while. Do you want to jump in now or you want me to keep on cooking and slide in later?
Oh no, you're doing great. I just wanted to do a couple of objections when you were setting up, the foundation of all of your stories. But I don't want to interrupt your flow.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. But I'm looking for feedback because this is a new space. So please lean in either in the middle or at the end as a reflection. I'm open to however you want it, but I definitely want to hear your feedback. Okay, so I was talking about the private school. So here's the interesting thing about the private school situation. On the one hand, I'm a black man in America. I'm not shy about that. As far as the black experience goes, there are more black people moving into homeschool than ever before. I mean, it's ticking up. At the same time, though, if I could be stereotypical here, black people don't read and black people don't like to do math. Okay, forgive me for such a broad statement because it's not universally true, but stereotypically, an argument can be made. So I do have a concern as a professional educator that we are what we're really doing is pulling our kids out of school altogether. And our kids are at home doing whatever, even well-intentioned homeschool parents in the black community. If I can remove though that particular community of black people that has actual resources and opportunity to do it well, I think there is a significant population that is low key just pulling their kids out of public school for good reasons or bad reasons. I'm concerned about, uh, let me make it very specific. I have a family member who has pulled her child out of school and she does what she calls homeschool. But in fact, it's not really homeschool. She's just at home. Okay. The lady's not a good teacher. She's not professionally trained, at least. And what really happens is the kid stays at home, and watches TV and goes with mom to the grocery store and shit like that. Like they're not actually doing history class and doing science experiments, like talking about it. So I do have a concern about what's going on in the black community as it relates to this uptick in homeschool. and I'll wait for more data to come out. But as it relates to the bigger picture, this private school movement really has me concerned, because what is happening is, this voucher program is accessible to every citizen of your state. So if you're part of one of those states, you can, um, take your voucher money, and it's pretty easy to identify, right? If you can go, I don't have it pulled up, but you can go to find out what the per pupil spending is for your state. Whatever that number is, you probably get access to as much as 70% of it, probably not more than that. And then you can take that money and move it over to let's say a Catholic school, right? Let's go to the extreme. In fact, there's news out that there's going to be a Catholic public school. So a Catholic school is actually looking for public funding. I don't have the article queued up, but and I'm not going to waste your time looking too deep to find it. But once I get this show a little bit tighter, I will certainly make it more available or have it a little bit more queued up. Anyway, so a Catholic public school is hilarious. Anyway, you could take your chunk and move it to this Catholic school. Now, let's say, for example, you get, for easy numbers' sake, I'm going to say 10 grand. It's probably not a reliable number. If you get 10 grand, you can take that to your local Catholic school. Now, here's what's been going on. Let's say the local Catholic school is 15 grand a year, right? Which is probably not a real number. What will happen is you have to then come up with the extra 5 grand. Now, if you're low income, that extra 5 grand still might be unreasonable for you to achieve. So you can't send your kid over there. So your kid stays, even though you, air quotes, have the opportunity to do so. What also happens is in good old US of A, we have something that we call the supply and demand curve. Gotta love American ingenuity here, because now that the Catholic school knows that you get a $10,000 voucher, it only makes sense in the law of supply and demand. There's going to be more demand for that school, that they're going to have to raise their prices to keep their demand in check. So the tuition goes from 15,000 to, now let's call it 20,000. So now even more families who could have maybe pulled off the 5 grand, now they can't pull off the 10 grand, and they also are going to get filtered back to their local school. Now, who does get to benefit from this public voucher system would be people who already can afford it. And so if I'm not mistaken, the state of Mississippi, I could be wrong. I'll try to find it and validate it. And if anybody's listening and your thumbs are working, please verify this information. But there is a state, I believe it is a southern state, maybe Mississippi, maybe Alabama, where 70% of the people who are taking advantage of the vouchers, those students were already in private schools. So you have families who can already afford to send their children to a typical private school that is now getting the voucher. So this is literally, and I was critical of this because I was like, nah, the money moves with the child. But here, that child was not in the public school system. So they were not using tax dollars their tax dollars were going to public school, and then their private tuition dollars were going to the private school for their individual child. Now what's happening is a portion of that public funds is going to that child who was already in private school. So it is a net drain on public school budgets statewide. And as that money, as the prices of those private schools goes up because of the supply and demand thing that I mentioned earlier, then what's going to happen is that family who could already afford the $15,000 gets a $10,000 discount. So now they only had to pay, air quotes, $5,000. But when the school raises the tuition to the $20,000 that I mentioned, which eliminated a lot of those other families who otherwise could not afford it, they have actually, that individual family who was paying 15 now has to pay 20, but then you subtract the 10, means that they actually are paying 10. So those who can already afford it are paying less. The school's budget is expanding widely, and the public school's budget is actually getting contracted. So this is a very good morning, Carla. This is a bit complicated, but there are many people who are speaking truth to power. So it's a funny business, but the paradigm is shifting. This is happening in real states. This has been happening really since before Trump got into office. Individual states have been doing this voucher type system, but now that Trump is in office, people are loud and proud with it, and it can certainly become problematic as it widens the gap between those who have and those who don't have. So it's a very interesting dynamic in terms of what's happening these days in education. So with that said, I think I'm going to land this, at least this portion of the plane. Andre, I'm going to pass it to you to hear your feedback, and then I'm going to try something else. We've got about 20 minutes left, and I have one other experiment I'd like to try. So with that said, Andre, I'm going to close my mic.
Oh, absolutely. So just, like to touch on what you were when you were talking about like the setup of this whole thing, like this juxtaposition, I think you are very eloquent in identifying that both sides take it a little bit too far and kind of push it. I just wanted to to make a couple of notes on the background of the critical theory approach, because it's a whole host of lenses. It's not really a theory, but more so a lens that has a very specific way of looking at things. It's basically in not so many terms begging the question, ideological paradigm where you have a conclusion that you are trying to figure out how to fit like your data into, because like the people like Adorno and Horkheimer, when they were talking about setting a new standard, they were going away from what they call the traditional theory. Like when you have data, you run some sort of analytical scheme, and you come to the conclusion that there you already have your, quote unquote conclusion, and you are trying to figure out how did it come to this conclusion. So it's kind of post hoc approach. And another thing that I think was kind of injected into it as a poison pill was the postmodern uh, uh, obsession with power and identifying the power, figuring out how the power moves, and controlling the power essentially through a relativist mindset. Because they made several very important, very true observations, which are, I would say, value neutral at its core. Like any culture and every culture is trying to preserve itself, and education is a very welcome and ready tool to do so. So any culture anywhere around the world, it brings up their young in a very specific way of thinking, paradigm, cultural tendencies, in order to kind of create continuity from generation to generation. Now, that obviously can be taken advantage of, that can be manipulated in a malicious manner, it can be manipulated in a positive manner. It all depends on intentions. And so it all became focused on the motivation. And, good motivations were identified, bad motivations identified. And, with the post hoc analysis, you have your, utopian goals, and you're trying to reach them by essentially social engineering. And Trump in that whole play he's a very interesting figure, because I don't have any sympathy for him on personal level, but he does fit in the whole Hobbesian idea of kind of two different approaches to politics. One is reflective approach. It's like a mirror that basically reflects what the constituents wants him to do. It's like an agent that is acting not on his own behalf, but on the behalf of the mandate. And I'm sure some people will disagree with me on this, but like the more I kind of see how fickle his vector is, political vector is, like the more I'm convinced in my view of him. And then the second one, I think that Hobbes described, is more of an identity politicking, meaning like a person needs to be part of the group necessarily in order to represent that group. So he has to share some sort of features, qualities, background, perhaps historical share some sort of historical identity with people in order to represent them correctly.
Hmm.
So there are two, not necessarily conflicting, but opposing ideas of how one should carry themselves, how he would express the political will, and what type of person is even allowed to express the political will. And to me, he is the first type. So he's a reaction of the public to what has been happening, and it just so happens that he became the figurehead or the face of that movement. Some people might like it, some people hate it, but that's sort of my commentary on this whole thing. And to comment on your later point, I also completely agree. So, in terms of how it's going overboard, it's not very well thought through, like the type of pushback against the woke ideology that has infiltrated and poisoned the education system. So it has a potential of creating a lot of uh, uh, unnecessary pain and create a lot of unexpected negative side effects to the proposed policies.
So a couple things you said, I think, are interesting. So we're going there now. So if anybody else wants to jump onto the stage, we're going to open up this conversation a bit. Um, yes, I'll kind of start from the most recent and work my way backwards to some of the things I heard. Number one, this idea that Donald Trump doesn't represent us. I think this was a very big shocker to a lot of folks when he was on the campaign trail. So, for example, in education in particular, there was a state, might be in Kentucky. There was a particular voting district in this state, which I'm calling Kentucky, that went overwhelmingly for Trump. But this is rural and low income, right? And so when they hear Trump's rhetoric and a lot of his talking points, they're like, go Trump. Yes, go USA, pro, dare I say, pro white agenda, right? Like he's one of us, make America great again. Like all these tropes really got this particular area very excited. And then he got into office and he starts to make these threats to education. And this particular school district, public school, relied on the federal government's funds in order to operate the school because they're operating at razor thin budgets because it's basically golly, which title is it for the low income? Title 1, maybe it's Title 1, Title 9, I don't remember. So they get the funding because they're in low income. We usually think about it as urban, but it's rural for this little white town. And so when he's talking about cutting Department of Education, cutting funds, cutting back on DEI stuff, right? Because DEI doesn't only include race. But under Nazi would know, but there's another title which deals with ESA. I don't have the stuff in front of me, so forgive me. But there is a lot of special ed funding which they use to fund, the playroom and various things that they need for this elementary school. And so when they look at their budget cuts, they don't have the margins to, how do you say, fill in the gap if some of that funding got withdrawn. So that particular community, especially the professional educators in that community, are really, what do you have? Buyer's remorse. They're really upset because their air quotes, their boy Trump is kind of undercutting them. And so this idea that he doesn't represent us, I think, is a very strong point. The Christian right was very pro Trump. And so some of the things that he is about is in alignment with what the strong white evangelical Christian community believes in. But in other ways, they feel betrayed by what's really going on as well. So that is something that I resonate with. The other thing that came up for me when you spoke is that what's interesting for me over the course of what is it from January to May, these first 90, 120 days, his team is really bold with it. Some of the things that I've heard from some of the pundits that represent his administration, they are unapologetically what the critical side would say is unapologetically racist, unapologetically sexist, unapologetically phobic of whatever variety you want to be a part of. So it's really interesting how this group is very bold. I think about Texas, and Nazi's in Texas, so she knows. But I think it's the governor in Texas is like going hard in the paint when it comes to things that the traditional Democratic Party held as core values. He's undercutting it, in particular the voucher program. He's really uh, pushing things like the state test as leverage to dismantle what's going on in the public education down there and more. So it's really wild work how bold and braggadocious his team is regarding their agenda. They're not being soft with the language as the Democrats did. The other thing that you said, which I thought was interesting, was how education is fertile ground. And that is, I think, a very bold criticism that um, again, I'll call it American exceptionalism, but I don't know what the name of this philosophy is. If you do, I'd love to hear so I can use the proper term. But that is a real concern of theirs, is that this Democratic woke mind virus camp came in through education programs. They have they are teachers. And they come in with the Gay Pride Month. I've seen video clips. This is kind of what I want to share, is like video clips on YouTube of like, you know, all kinds of stuff. In fact, maybe I don't think I have one. I think I have one that I could show you, which is okay. Here we go. Let me pull this one up because this might represent the sort of thing that I want to offer. So listen to this clip, and then we can kind of unpack it from there. It's not well edited, but you should be able to hear it. Enjoy this.
I don't know if it's because I asked if I wanted more and if I wanted a graphic novel version. I was in the library and this book was on a stand. I'd like to read you a page. My back over my hips as I ask if we should take our clothes off. And he's saying yes before I finish my sentence. He's pulling off my t-shirt, laughing when I can't undo his shirt buttons. He's undoing my belt. I'm reaching into his bedside drawer for a condom. We're kissing. Again, we're rolling over. Obviously, you can see where this is going. I don't know if it's because we're feeling especially emotional or just tired. But it was good too, so good. Because we were a mess of emotions, and we were scared and excited, and everything felt new. So this sort of feels like that. Nick touches me like he's scared at any minute. Now, this book was at my middle school, and it was on a stand. When I rented it out to show my dad it, the librarian asked if I wanted more and if I wanted a graphic novel version. I was in the library, and
So this is what they're pushing against. This is what they mean when they refer to indoctrination happening in our schools. Now, I don't know where you stand on it. I'm not here to make a position. What I am here to say is this is what the criticism is, that there's a librarian at whatever this kid's middle school is, 11-year-old boy, brought this to a school board meeting. This is on the stand and he's reading it. Whether that's appropriate or not is where the criticism comes from, right? So when we talk about education being fertile ground for the indoctrination of young minds, this is one thing, what they have access to. Now, Nazi has been a big, how do I say, she has brought to my radar this idea of censoring text. And so there's a real push and pull. There's some real tension around which texts should be censored and which are age appropriate. But it certainly is something worth talking about. Here, I'm going to give you another one, and then perhaps I'll cook a little bit more. Here's, oh, you know what would be good? The ZZ. Hold on. I got what, if I can find it. Where's this? Okay, here we go. They Crystal. Check this one out. Okay. And I think it'll further the point, and then I'll land on this concept. Check this one.
Crystal, or you can call me Crystal, or you can call me They Crystal if you want. I think that's pretty funny. So my name is Mix Crystal, like Chex Mix. Can you guys say hi, Mix Crystal?
Hi, Mix Crystal.
Does anybody know what mix means? There's Mr. and there's Miss. Anybody seen mix before? So mix basically means I'm non-binary. That means I don't identify as a boy or a girl, which means when you talk about me, which you better not be smack, you're gonna say they. Exactly.
My mom told me that if you don't want to be called Mr.
Crystal is so cool. They have cool glasses, and they have black hair, and they have a cool little shirt and thrifted jeans. Who can give me an example? Yes. That's so sweet. Not they Crystal, mix Crystal, but I love that. I love that you said they Crystal. I'll take it, honestly. And that's all. I just want to share with you. So when we are teaching and stuff like that, just call me Mix Crystal, or you can call me Crystal, or you can call me they Crystal if you want. I think that's pretty funny. So
I think it's pretty funny too. Another highlight, but this is what they mean. This is non-academic. This is her putting her identity. Now, here's how the two camps look at this. Camp number one, what I'm calling the critical theory camp, says, yeah, it's a teacher at an elementary school. So we're talking about little kids here, younger than the 11-year-old from the previous clip. That camp says, yes, lean in, Mixed Crystal. You are non-binary, and that's okay. And these kids should learn a certain level of tolerance, even at a very young age. And so Mixed Crystal going in there saying, I'm a they, and the kids kind of stumbling through, they Crystal is really cool. Like the critical theory side says, yes, that's exactly what should be happening at an elementary school, because it leads to a more tolerant society. It leads to reduced what will we call it? It leads to a reduction in homophobia and bigotry and all of that, because they're getting exposed to the fact that there's all types of people and that they should be able to express themselves in all sorts of ways, right? And now we can have a conversation about what binary means and all of that. So the one side says, yes, and do more of that. And the other side says, WTF.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, jump in.
Just to add a little bit to what you already said, everything is like on point. But one more note there. Not only they say that, but they also say, perhaps one of those kids is non-binary or
Right.
have
Yep.
some sort of identity thing, and it's good for them to get exposed to it, because then they can find somebody who is just like them, so they don't feel ostracized, and they can express their identity.
No, yes, exactly. There may be someone in the classroom. And so now we have a safe space, right? We have, what do they call that? Social and emotional learning happening here, right? So that's exactly what we want, is that kind of a thing. The other side says, hold up, wait a minute. I wish I had a sound clip for that. Hold up. Because that's going too far. A child of that age shouldn't have to grapple with that. A child of that age is now being indoctrinated, and not indoctrinated by the people who love them, right? Their parents, who, let's say, are Judeo-Christian and they have their certain values. Like, that's the kind of indoctrination that should come out of the home from their parents, and not necessarily from a paid agent of the state. And so it is that's the challenge, right? They both want a safe space for their children, but the way that they're approaching it is radically different. So they're looking at the same coin, but they're certainly looking at different sides of that coin. I have one other, but it's 4:58, so maybe I need to start landing this plane. But this is what I hope to do with Homeroom. Bring you guys some clips that we can talk about, bring you guys some news that I can at least raise your awareness of. I'm on this theme of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So at least for the next couple of who knows what's, excuse me, I'm going to be kind of revolving this conversation around what's happening at DEI. Could be at the university level, could be at the K-12, or let's call it K-16 level. We see issues of DEI falling in. So I want to do a bit of a historical context. I'm going to go back to doing my Sunday rooms. So not this Sunday, but on the following Sunday, I actually want to do a DEI piece where I spend a relatively significant amount of time talking about the deep history of DEI and where it actually got started. And the first formal federal policy on diversity, equity, and inclusion took place over 100 years ago, almost 150 years ago. And so I have some folks that are well versed in what was happening then. They're going to talk to us about it, and we're going to kind of march our way forward through history all the way up to the 1960s, where, you know, we had the civil rights movement and we had a resurgence of this idea of a federal policy to encourage inclusion and diversity. And it started in the economic space, but then, as we've discussed here, it made its way into education. And then from there, we're going to kind of move into the more modern version of what DEI looks like, and how some would say it is getting to the levels of ridiculosity, if that's even a word, about how maybe this diversity thing has gone too far. And now people, I'll put this in air quotes, I think I have a clip for it. People are suggesting that kids want to identify as cats, and public schools, in order to accommodate, let's talk about the 504 accommodation, Nazi, right? That's on the chopping block. Um, can make a 504 accommodation to put a kitty litter inside an area so that the child who identifies as a cat can go poop in the kitty litter, right? Which has been debunked, but you know, it goes there. It goes into the realm of like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. And so let's take our time and sort of unpack this. Welcome to Homeroom, everybody. If you haven't done so, I've got a YouTube channel where I'm actually streaming this conversation live so that we can kind of move beyond the foolishness of Clubhouse and try to get some meaningful conversations in this morning show style. Carla has been helping me figure out what this should look like. So I'm kind of toying with different formats and different ways to bring content and information. Part of the question and comment is, should this be more broadcast style? Should it be more community based? Should it be theme based, or should it be hot topics based? And so all these things I'm going to sort of experiment with. And I would certainly appreciate your support and your feedback as I figure out what does Homeroom, the morning show, look like, and what do you guys as audience members want to experience. So with that said, we're at 5:02. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Typically on Friday, I would have I have a room called Faith and Leadership that I go to. Starts around 5:30, but it's a non-recorded room, so I won't be streaming there unless I have permission. And then later on Friday is something called the Hallway Podcast, ran by, I think, Tabitha Arlene. So I'll be there. Unfortunately, I won't be able to live stream that one because I won't be at my desk at the time that she runs her room. But starting next month, I should be able to do some live streams of that space. And what else is going on? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm off. And so the next time I see you guys will be Homeroom on Monday morning. I'm going to try another version of this experiment, and hopefully you guys will see me. And maybe you can check me out on YouTube. Let me see if there's any comments. Let me do that, and then I'll close this out. Oh, I shut it down. Anyway, what I hope to be able to do, and I'll close with this idea, is during the live stream, I should be able to monitor the chat on YouTube and respond to people that are watching on YouTube, and monitor the Clubhouse and bring up people and diversify the voices and thoughts of folks that are on the actual Clubhouse experience. And I'm trying to, how do I say, bridge these two platforms in a simulcast way. But technically speaking, it's really quite complicated. And I'm doing this all by myself, right? So I'm both the talent and the production assistant at the same time. So I'm trying to figure it out, and I appreciate your patience. But this is Homeroom. I appreciate your support, and we'll go ahead and land this plane. I'll see you guys in these streets. Closing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Peace, everybody. Oh, Amunette, hey girl, you just made it for the after party. Let's turn up now that all the squares are gone. No, I'm joking. All right, bye everybody. All right, for YouTube, thank you guys for watching, and I certainly appreciate your support as I try to grow this channel out. Let me bring this down. I have left this little screen up far too long. Sorry, it's all about pushing buttons. All right, YouTube, I think you heard all my announcements. I'm still trying to figure it out and trying to get my flow of how to click and how to move to make this visual experience more clean. As you can see on the camera, my camera is trash. And so at some point I will be making a call to action to support this mission. If you do support what we're doing, one of the first things that I'm going to do is try to upgrade this camera so that I'm not like, you know, I don't know what to call it, but it's a low quality camera. I have lighting issues, as you can see, like the gamma white balance or whatever it's called is way off. And so there's a lot of things that I need to clean up. But as of right now, I'm about consistency, producing the content, getting out, getting on live, letting folks know what I do. So this is the mission. If you want to support, you can check out educatorshouse.com. Even the website is not totally formed out, but I'm here for it anyway. And I'm excited that you're here on this journey with me. Okay, that's enough words.